Alright, good morning guys and welcome to the Sports Buffet on Dagote TV Radio. My name is David Dein. You love to call me the Dagote one of sports. And I think that, you know how they say that once in a lifetime you would have that one opportunity that changes and defines your career, that one moment that makes you say, yes, I went from being regular, from being ordinary to being extraordinary. That one moment where heavens touch the earth, okay, where what you dream of become your reality. So guys, I know that I've said it on Twitter and Instagram and across all my social media platforms about the fact that this show today is a special one. First off, we had to move it forward by 30 minutes and we have to adjust the show a little bit. But let me give you guys a little bit of a background before I bring my guest on board the show today. So I've been trying to interview this colossal human being for 15 years. First time I wanted to interview him was in 2007. Yes, you get that right, 2007. I made all the effort, everything humanly possible to get to interview him, but I keep missing him out. Then I went to Dubai for soccer rest. I tried to get to interview him. It wasn't possible. Not because he didn't want to do the interview, but he was just busy. Then he came to Lagos for soccer rest again at the Oriental Hotels, and I tried to interview him, but my former colleague Anthony Becker beat me to it, and I felt like he stole my thunder. But it was good because you've got to be a team player, and it was good for the team. And as we move forward on the conversation, I left my former employers. Remember how I got fired, and I set up this establishment. Now the whole thing is the fact that I'm an Arsenal fan. Not only being an Arsenal fan, my father actually worked for the club called Arsenal Football Club in the 60s and the 70s. This is an FA Cup medal to show for it. The 1971 FA Cup medal. Now I'm going to push it further down. I think that the best time, you know, in Madrid they have a man called Florentino Perez. In Barcelona they have a man called Juan Laporte. Not the current era anyway. In Bayern Munich they have a man called the Kaiser himself, Franz Beckenbauer, and all of the other guys that came in. In Italy, there is a man called Silvio Berlusconi for AC Milan, Morata for Inter Milan, Agnelli for Juventus. Every club have that one person whose era symbolizes and defines the greatness of that club. It's called the golden era. With this person, you just know that once they stepped in, everything that was bad, they've got the Midas touch, begin to turn into gold. And for him, it's not just a man that defines the club. He's the guy who defines the whole era of the modern game that we play. People talk about how good the Premier League is. I grew up in the UK and I was going in and out of the UK. I remember the British game was synonymous with gross hooliganism. The hooliganism in the British game was way out of the line, out of the mark. But then this man, after the Hillsborough disaster, decided to do something, not just to complain. Like I always say over here, we can complain all we like. If we don't take a step to make a move to change things will remain the same. And there's a famous quote by this man. He says, if you don't stick your neck out, you never win. I'm talking about no other. And he's got this plaque, this tortoise plaque that was given to him at the 2014 World Cup, if I remember. That tells you that I've been searching up this man everywhere. And he can sing too. And then he's got a whole lot of Nigerian and West African and West Indies connection. If you like sugar, then you love this man. If sugar has done anything good to your life, then you love this man as well. He's a businessman, he's a married man, he's a father to 2 wonderful children, he's a boss of bosses and boss of bosses, okay? He is the doyen of industry, he's a captain of industry, he's a leader of men, he's a game changer, and just one man who would never take no for an answer. That's what Arsene Wenger described him. That is a man that would never take no for an answer. The only guy who never disagrees with him, apart from maybe the position or referees. He's got a book out called Calling the Shot, and there's no other person who called the shot better than this man, the great, the ubiquitous, the amazing, indefatigable David Dein. He's a former vice chairman of the English Football Association, is also former vice chairman of Arsenal. But don't be deceived by the vice chairman position, because everything that happened good at Arsenal happened because this man was in charge. Good morning and welcome to the Sports Buffet, Mr. David.
Good morning, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. May I call you Edafe?
Yes, you can call me Edafe.
Okay.
So, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, and you know, Nigeria is really my second home, don't you?
I know that. I know that, and I think that's where I'm going to start this conversation. So you left Arsenal in 2007. I'm practically certain that there is not a question about Arsenal that I'm going to ask you that somebody I've not asked you before, or the whole how So Campbell was signed, the clandestine CIA, FBI, marine stuff that you guys did, walking on the balcony in the night, and all those questions have been asked. How you got Arsene Wenger from Arsene who to Arsene legend? With all those questions have been asked. So I'm going to take it a different route this time around. You have a friend in Nigeria, Africa's #1 billionaire, and an astute businessman in Nigeria. His name is Aliko Dagote. Just about the time when you left Arsenal, we started hearing rumors that he's going to buy into Arsenal. And the first time I heard that rumor, I went on air and I said, this is the hand of David Dein and the voice of Aliko Dagote. Can you please affirm to me if Dangote had a conversation with you about buying over Arsenal at the time?
Yeah. Well, firstly, Dafe, my relationship with Alhaji Aliko Dangote goes back to about 1980, when actually he bought his very first cargo of sugar from me. I was in the sugar business at the time, and he actually bought some sugar from me, and then we became trading partners, we became good friends, and even now today I keep in touch with him. In fact, I do hope that he has I've asked him to distribute my book in Africa. So, calling the shots, as you can see here, I sent a copy to him with our mutual friend Amaju Pinnick yesterday. Pinnick happened to be at my house. He was in London yesterday. So I gave him a personalized autographed copy to give to Aliko Dangote for him to have a look at it, and I hope that within all his organization he will take control of distributing my book, because we're such good friends around the whole of Africa. So the answer to your question is, we did have a message when I was leaving Arsenal. I did have a discussion with Aliko, and I said, it's an opportunity if you want to buy some shares. He thought about it, and at the time he was doing so much in his own business, I think he just couldn't take on that extra responsibility.
All right, thank you very much for that. And I must say that Amaju Melvin Pinnick played a very pivotal role to get you to sit on the table, on this table with me for us to have this conversation. But let's go back. How did a young man whose mother is into food business, evolved, morphed into the kind of astute businessman that you are? Because you didn't you didn't grow from money. You didn't come from money. You come from the regular, everyday human lives. How did you morph into this genius of a businessman who think in a different way from every other person?
That's very kind for your flattery. It's very nice of you. Thank you, Edafe. Well, it's all in the book, and I hope you can buy the book or even get the audio version, because I actually recorded the whole of the book with my own voice, and the foreword is by Arsene Wenger. He's also recorded his part. So anybody, if you don't want to buy the book, you can actually buy the audio version, which you can hear if you're in the gym, you're in the bath or something. You can actually listen to my words reading the book. So my life really started in my business life started thanks to my late mother. My mother had a shop in Shepherd's Bush Market, and this was in the 1950s. And she started to import. It was at the time when we call it the Windrush generation, when all of a sudden, the 1950s, there were a lot of people coming into England from West Africa, from the West Indies. And my mother realized when she had a little shop that people were asking her for her own foods, for yams, for okra, for plantain, for green bananas, right, for breadfruit and mangoes. And she went out and she managed to travel out to West Africa and the West Indies, and she brought in these foodstuffs. And before long, that shop became the epicenter for African people to go to for their food. And that was really my start when I started developing that business with my late brother. And then I went into the sugar business after that, and then I bought into Arsenal in 1983. But the whole thing is actually very, very accurately put into the book if you get a copy of it.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't want to do with this interview is to be a spoiler for the book. So I've listened to the audio version of it. I placed an order already on Amazon for the book. I'm waiting for my delivery. And I love the fact that Arsene Wenger did an amazing forward recorded in his office, and how he said the way you people came together was a marriage made in heaven anyway. And you know, the time where when I listened to that, I was like, okay, Arsene Wenger was just passing by, and then he's so picked to go watch Arsenal playing against Tottenham, and somehow your wife happens to be there. You see, the thing is, some of these things are written in the stars, and then you just so pick up that moment to say, let me go check up on my wife. And you went to check up on your wife, and they say, oh, a friend to a friend, you want to light a cigarette. I mean, the story looked like something out of fiction, like something written by Steven Spielberg or Stan Lee, or, you know, a James Bond kind of movie. My name is James Bond, you know. But one of the things that I like to know from you, because I have a very large Nigerian and African audience, is when it comes to taking decision, one of the hardest or toughest decision you've had to take as vice chairman of Arsenal was signing a Nigerian player by the name Kanu. And the reason being that he's reached a place in his career where it felt like nobody wanted him anymore, because he's got his heart condition, the aorta valve of his heart, and he's won the Olympic, he's won the under-17 gold medal at the World Cup, he's done everything. He's won the UEFA Champions League with Ajax, he's won the Dutch League, the Dutch FA Cup, or the Amstel Cup as it was called at the time. And this was when Morata was saying, okay, we're going to get you employed in the tire business, and we'll give you a franchise or Africa, but he still wanted to play football. How did David Dein decide, I am going to take the gamble on this guy? Let's not forget that at the time, medical facilities are not as advanced as we have today with Eriksen at Manchester United. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I think really it was Arsene Wenger who discussed it with me, obviously. This was in 1999, and he was at the time at Inter Milan, as you know. And Arsene and I discussed it, and we said, well, I wonder whether we could get, you know, Arsene suggested I go and speak to Inter Milan, and I did. And it was a wonderful guy, the vice president called Visconti Midroni, who was running Inter Milan for Moratti. And I went over to Milan, and I spoke to him. We discussed, and I met, obviously, Kanu. And I felt we had a very good rapport, particularly because I knew Nigeria so well. I knew where he was born in Owerri. Obviously, I'd been to Lagos and Kanu and all the everywhere in Nigeria. I've been traveling around. We had a very good relationship, and I liked him a lot. And I mentioned to Arsene, I think the guy is definitely, we should try and bring him in if we can. And Arsene agreed. So we brought him over to London, and obviously he had to have some serious medicals at the time because of his problem before, his heart problem. And I'm delighted to say that everything was given the all clear, that they felt the operation was very successful. There was no reason why he shouldn't continue playing. And as you know, he joined us in 1999 and he stayed for 5 years. And he was a great player. I mean, you know, he played over 100 games for us. I think he scored over 30 goals. And he was a wonderful, and I'm still in touch today. And when he comes to England, you know, I always try and see him when I can. He was fantastic. His attitude was wonderful. He was a good trainer. He was a great professional footballer.
And Wright in his book said something about you that they don't make men like you anymore. Now, when he signed from Crystal Palace for Arsenal, and all of the contract renewals that he had, he didn't have to read it. You just give him a call and say, right? Your contract is ready, and he just goes in and signs because he knows that David always will take care of my needs. And for as long as I sign, I'm signing for the best club, but not just the best club, but I'm under the best man for the job, which is David. But let's go back, because there's something about English football pre-1992 that is reminiscent of what we are facing right now in Nigerian football. And I know that a gentleman by the name of Shehu Diko in 2005 led a team that have Obaseki, Ibrahim Galadima, and a host of other men from Nigeria to come learn at your table how you got the job done. How did we go from, and I use the word we now because there's a part of me that is British, how did we go from terrible hooliganism in English football generally and boring Arsenal under Graham, even though we were winning titles, but I mean we scored one goal in the second minute and we defend to the end of the game, to Arsenal being one of the most exciting clubs in the world at a time, maybe behind Barcelona and Real Madrid, and then the Premier League, the English League, going from the English League to the Premier League. I know you had a lot of meetings, knocking down doors. What a lot of people of this generation that are crying about VAR does not understand was that you are the man responsible for coaches having 15 minutes at halftime. I'm sure a lot of people don't remember that. Can you elaborate on the challenges that you had to deal with?
Yes, well, when I joined the board of Arsenal in 1983, the whole turnover of the club was £1.5 million. Today it's nearly 500 million. So you can see how it is developed, how it's exploded. Now, in the 1980s, as you quite rightly said, Duffy, we had hooliganism. Women were not going to the games. Mothers didn't want their children to go to the games. They were worried about their safety. The grounds themselves were antiquated. They needed regenerating. They needed upgrading. They were poor. They weren't fit for purpose. And of course, Hillsborough was a big turning point for English football in 1989. Attendances were going down the drain. They were really suffering when I joined. And in fact, the late chairman, Peter Wood, when I invested in Arsenal, he said it was dead money. He couldn't understand what I was doing. But I joined the club because I felt I had something to contribute. I wanted to try and help Arsenal and indeed English football. And after Hillsborough, there was a famous meeting which I refer to in the book, which was a very, very dramatic meeting, which was probably, for me, made up my mind to form the Premier League, that meeting, when I met the parents of 2 children who tragically died at Hillsborough. That was a turning point for me. That's when the lights went on to say, I'm going to change football. And we then decided, we had 4 divisions in those days, making up 92 professional clubs. And my idea was to take the top division of 22 clubs and break away, form a whole new legal entity, rebrand ourselves, reinvent ourselves, call ourselves the Premier League and start again. The Premier League now this year has been going for 30 years, Edafe. It is now the most successful, economically successful league, the league most watched around the world. It's got nearly 2 billion viewers around the world, as you know, in Nigeria. It is the league where everybody wants to play, where the managers want to manage, and now you've got all the investors want to invest in it. So it's been a huge success. It now runs at 97.8% capacity. That means every stadium in the Premier League is full. You take Arsenal Stadium, 60,000 people, week in, week out, sold out, with another 50,000 people on a wait list who can't get tickets for the games. So the Premier League has just taken off. And you've got to say, the players that we've had in over the years, and particularly from Nigeria, and obviously Kanu is the first name you think of, JJ Okocha, Amakachi, Taribo West, John Obi Mikel, Olufede Martins, Fashanu, Baba Yarrow, Yakubu, Moses, Awobi, Igalo. We've had so many Nigerian players who come in to improve the Premier League. It's been fantastic. It's been a joy for me because of my affiliation, my association with Nigeria.
My greatest desire was to see Nigeria being able to replicate exactly what you achieved. And that's been very, very difficult, because people say, oh, it's easy to transfer knowledge. We've had a lot of people come to learn and study under your feet, but somehow it's hard. If you want to advise the Nigerian government, because football is the greatest unifier, and beyond that is a $5 billion industry in Nigeria if it is well harnessed. If you want to advise the Nigerian government and the entire stakeholders and the fan base of Nigeria, what can they learn from David Dein, and what can they learn from the Premier League?
Yeah, well, everything always starts with the grassroots. You've got to be able to develop talent. Now, Nigeria is a wonderful production because everybody loves football, and you've got the basic talent there. It's got to be harnessed. So every club has got to have a good academy, and the first thing you've got to have is good coaches. So you've got to improve the coaches. I know Arsene Wenger today, he said, I was with him, he's in London actually at the moment. I had lunch with him the other day, and I said to him, what do you want your legacy to be? He said two things, because he's now, as you know, head of global development for football, for FIFA, for the world. And I said, what do you want your legacy to be? He said two things. One, he said, I want to see more boys and girls playing football. And two, I want to see better coaches coaching them. Right? And that's exactly what's got to happen in Nigeria. You've got to encourage the youngsters to play the game, and you've got to have better coaches. Then you've got to be able to have the investment into the stadia to make sure you've got the facilities right. And you know, this takes place, and I know when Pinnick was the president of the Nigerian FA, that was his goal. He's a very good guy. He was very determined to try and improve Nigerian football. And you've got the opportunity there because you've got such a big population. It's right, and you've got the talent. It is exciting. You know, when I was at Arsenal, I always made sure we had talent scouts, particularly in West Africa, because they're the fertile grounds. Nigeria, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon. That's, you know, that's where Ghana, where you've got great talent coming through.
Yeah, there's a whole buffet of who you are. There's David Dein, the football man, the businessman, the family man. In 2022, we're in an era where you find it very difficult to keep a marriage for 2 years or 5 years. It's almost impossible now to have a marriage. What's the secret to you having a marriage that have lasted so long?
You're talking about my personal marriage?
Yes, your personal marriage.
Ah, that's good. Well, I've been married. I celebrated my 50th anniversary in August, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's always the same. It's compromise. It's give and take, and it's the same in anything in a relationship. You've got to understand your partner. You've got to be able to communicate well. Communication is always the key word. Edafe, you've got to understand your partner.
And as a father of two, when you look back now, when you sit your kids down, the boy and...
I'm a father of 3 and a grandfather of 8.
Whoa, okay, so a father of 3, I'm sorry. When you sit your kids down, I mean, Richard Branson was asked, why is it that your children live a different kind of lifestyle from you? And he said his answer was, I'm a poor man's child and they are a billionaire's child. When you sit with your children and your grandchildren, what's the ultimate advice you give to them?
I always used to say to them, I want you to have a good time, enjoy yourself, have fun, do well in life, just try not to embarrass me along the way. If anything, I probably embarrass them more than they've embarrassed me.
I don't think if I have you for a father, I don't think that I can point anything that represents embarrassment. So let's look at this. You brought Arsene Wenger to Arsenal. You changed the English game to the Premier League. You brought Arsenal from, you know, what it used to be to this Arsenal. But beyond that, you spent the least amount of money ever by any club chairman, president, or vice chairman to make a team go unbeaten. The most expensive player in that unbeaten team was £9.5 million pounds, Thierry Henry from Juventus to Arsenal. How did you manage to do it? And I know you said something about Gilberto Silva explaining to you how the players were nodding from one player to the other. While that is good aesthetically, I also think that you need to tell me something way more than that, deeper than that. I'm a football man, so I need to hear something more than that.
Well, Edafe, Do you think Coca-Cola will give you the secret of their formula?
That's not fair. That's not fair. I'm an Arsenal man. I deserve to know.
It comes to one word, and that is judgment. So when Arsene Wenger and I, we used to have a look at a player, and we would decide, and invariably it wasn't a well-known player. We would always, when we were thinking of, Thierry Henry wasn't particularly known, Manu Petit, when you think of Nicolas Anelka, bringing him through, right? So it's one word, it's called judgment.
Yeah. And I guess you mean absolute good judgment of it. But then there's something that happened with Arsenal. You left in 2007, and from that very moment when you left, our transfers begin to peter down. There was delay, there were times. Do you think that the biggest mistake of the later years of the Wenger era was the fact that they did not replace David Dein?
Well, certainly, it's not for me to say that, Edafe, but one thing is certain, that Arsene and I had a very, very special relationship. It was based on knowledge, on trust, on friendship, and we always invariably felt the same. If we were going for a player, we would both write down, we had this little ritual that if we were going to buy a player, we would both put down on a piece of paper what we thought he was worth. And then we would open it up together, and we would never be more than 5% difference.
Wow.
So we were always on the same wavelength.
You brought Wenger to Arsenal. You also brought Wenger and Eriksson from Lazio, I think, to the English team. England were in 17th place when you brought him, and then you became 4th in the world when he left. Which of these two decisions would you consider your biggest success?
I think they were both successful in their own right. They were both very different. It's one thing, looking after a national team. It's another thing looking after a domestic team, a domestic club, where you've got 50, 60 games a season to look after. An international manager may have less than a dozen games a season. So it's different, but both are very, very important. But on a daily basis, certainly when you think of what Arsene achieved at Arsenal in 22 years at the club, you won't see that again. The average length of time a manager is in a job today in the 92 professional clubs in England is 12 months.
Wow.
Right? Look at Steve Gerrard last week, got released from Aston Villa. So, every couple of months there's another manager leaving. So you don't get that longevity because the new breed of owners want immediate success. They expect it, and it doesn't work that way. It takes time for a team to evolve. When you look at our famous Invincibles, that team really took a couple of years to come together. And when it did, it was poetry in motion. That will, as long as football is written about, you will always talk about the Invincibles for what they did, because that was just pure poetry in motion.
You're absolutely correct, David. And I need to know from a man who is an erudite businessman, and in your book, Calling the Shot, there is a part of the book that talked about you being defrauded, and you kept that to yourself for 40 years. You never mentioned it. You were going through all the motions of life, dealing with family's issue, dealing with everything, losing your brother, but you never mentioned it, and then you finally decide to mention it. Just a snippet. How did that happen?
Okay, well, you really have to recall the detail, the graphic details, and it was something which was, and to this day I still carry a very big wound about that. But I never like talking about negatives, and this happened 40 years ago, don't forget. And I hadn't told a soul about it, but I had two wonderful ghostwriters in Amy Lawrence and Henry Winter. Amy Lawrence had written a book called The Invincibles herself, and she did a book on the '89 team. Henry Winter, as you know, writes for the Times, is a very prolific, very respected writer. And both of them laid the ground rules down. They said, if we're going to help you with your book, You've got to tell everything. Whatever's happening in your life, you've got to be prepared to bare your soul, because otherwise it's not a proper autobiography. It's got to come, everything, good, bad, or indifferent, it's got to come out. So that was difficult for me because there were a lot of personal aspects of it. You know, my growing up life, my business life, my reversal. Everybody has reversals. Edafe, everybody has a reversal. You know, you talk about anybody who has been Elon Musk or somewhere, right? Or you talk about Alan Sugar and anybody. Everybody's had reversals. Jeff Bezos, anybody who's been successful. And I've had a reversal or two, but you have to deal with them. It's how you pick yourself up from that reversal. And that is very well documented in the book. And I'm afraid it happened actually because I was trading sugar in Nigeria, and the guy I was trading with very sadly defrauded me, and it nearly ruined me. But I had to pick myself up and continue. And it was just at the time when I was buying into Arsenal. So it was a very sensitive time of my life. But I had to hold my head up high and really push to make sure that I could survive.
Thank God you survived, because your survivor meant that we have the Premier League today, we have Arsenal. But then there is an Arsenal question that I want to ask. When Arsenal won the title in '89 at Anfield, with a young captain, Tony Adams at the time, and when you sign a player that is regarded as finished in right, and he became a record goal scorer, and when you brought Arsene Wenger, the one that is regarded as Arsene who, which of these three moments would you classify on your top number one highest moment? Because going to Anfield to score 2 goals and winning the title for me was incredible. Okay, and then the following season Leeds United won it, but then turning and right, a Sunday player that really didn't have a good grassroots story, turning that guy into a club legend is also amazing. But then Arsene Wenger, which would you put at the top of your food chain?
They're different, they're very different, and both helped in their own way to change Arsenal. And in fact, when I consider, the players that we brought in over the years, and you talk about Ian Wright, certainly he would, because of his personality, he was an extrovert, he loved the game, he would play with a smile, he's just a happy soul. And now he's gone on to have such a successful career in broadcasting. And I'm honoured to say he's still one of my close friends today. We see each other regularly. I love him dearly. He's like one of my sons. And I always used to say that about my team. Whenever I signed a player, I adopted them into my family. They were part of my own extension of my own thing. Even though I've only got 3 children, right? I really had every player I felt was an extension to me. And I made sure that I knew everything about them. I knew their wives, I knew their girlfriends, sometimes I knew both. And they were all special to me. And I wanted to know if everything was all right with them. So signing Ian Wright was a very big step for Arsenal. And then obviously bringing in Arsene changed the Arsenal culture and changed football in general in England, perhaps in Europe, maybe around the world, because of his techniques in training, in diet, and the way he managed. He was an unusual manager. Don't forget, he was an ex-footballer, he was a footballer, but you find a lot of ex-footballers, they just leave and they go straight into management. He actually went to university, he had a good education, he had a degree in economics, he studied medicine, he understood the philosophy of players, the psychology. He was a very highly intelligent guy. So he changed the aspect of football in this country dramatically. And players extended their careers because of him.
And finally, before I let you go, I promised you it was going to be for 30 minutes or so, so let me keep my promise. And I'm hoping that you would adopt me as one of your sons as well. But one player that Arsenal signed that for me was the game changer, just the way Arsene Wenger was the game changer, is Dennis Beckham. But let's not forget that before signing Dennis Beckham, there was a time where he was seen as a bad guy. Dennis the menace, he was rough, he was picking the red card, he was, the non-flying Dutchman. How did you convince Dennis Beckham, a player of that stature, to come play for a club that is renowned for booze, alcohol, and the rest? How did you convince Dennis Beckham? Because I heard from a buddy that it was your decision.
Yeah, well, in fact, this was before Arsene Wenger. This was in 1994, don't forget.
Yeah,
Arsene
I know.
Six. And Dennis joined at the same time, really, as David Platt, you may remember. So Dennis also came in the same club from Kanu. He came from Inter Milan. And I went over there, I met him, and I met his coach, his agent. We had discussions, and he decided he was ready for a challenge. He was ready to join Inter Milan. I don't think he'd settled down well. And of course, he had this wonderful training upbringing, as Kanu did. They both shared the same thing with Ajax. They both actually learnt their trade in football really in Ajax. So we've got to thank Ajax a little bit for developing both their careers, both Kanu and Dennis. And if you ask both of them, they will tell you that. They were instrumental in that. So yes, it took a bit of persuasion to bring them both over to Arsenal, but I'm delighted we did, because they both enhanced Arsenal greatly.
All right, thank you very much, David, for sharing your time. And for you guys that are listening or watching out there, you can get this book on Apple Store, the audio or the hardback. You can order anywhere and it will come to you. Calling the shot. You have to learn how to call the shot in life, in business, and also how to deal with everything. I say David Dein is a man who bled yet led very well from the front, across all front. Thank you very much for your time on the show today.
Hey, Duffy, thank you very much.
Wow, that is David Dein, the former vice chairman of Arsenal, as well as the former vice chairman of the English Football Association, a man who sat on many boards across Europe, UEFA and FIFA, and did incredibly well at doing all of them. What I would have to say to you is that when you live your life in such a way that the landmark of achievement that you spew out there would outlive you and would also help to change and define a lot of people's life. Thank you very much, Mr. David Dein, for giving us your time, for being on the show. I want to say massive thank you to all of his team that made this happen, and Amaju Pinnick for leaving the hospital and say to me, you have troubled me for 4 years about this David Dein thing. Let me go to his house and go and put a call through. Because of Amaju Pinnick, I now have his direct phone number, and I had to cut past all the red tapes that are available. God bless everybody who made this happen. Special thank must go to our producer Ahmed Kalejaye for being available to make it happen. Thank you so much. God bless you, and God bless you all for always trusting Elegbata TV and radio to bring you the very best. For those of you who came in late, this interview will be available on our YouTube channel. Just subscribe to the YouTube channel, Elegbata TV Sports, and we would have fun all the time. Don't forget to tell a friend that something good is going on at Elegbata TV Sports, the YouTube channel, and subscribe and always engage us on our conversation. Currently, we're running an identifier shot where we put in a player and we'll ask you to name the player across all social media platforms, on Twitter, Facebook, on Instagram, and on the YouTube channel. Please engage with us as we try to grow. God bless you and have for yourself a wonderful day. Once again, my name is David Dein. You love to come in the Elegbata on the spot. Bye bye.
You are listening to Elegbata TV Radio.